Yeah, I guess we could have used it on a potluck day, but that's
Andrew, air
uh-huh.
fryer ovens are very handy. Just like
Oh, no, we have one at home. Yeah, I agree.
Staff would use it at other times, Andrew. I've had it at both my last municipalities, and people cook lunches on them.
Yeah.
Okay. Looks good too. But...
We are good to go.
Okay. No more pops.
So I'll just wait 1 minute here. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, welcome and good morning. There are 3 public meetings regarding proposed development applications in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meetings were sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, which is 400 feet, of the subject properties. Signage was also posted on the respective subject properties to provide information about the applications. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for a statutory public meeting. The purpose of the meetings are to inform and provide the public and Planning Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of each of the public meetings will be as follows. The applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the application. Second, township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant and or their agent. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And lastly, members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting, for each application, the applicant, their agent, and if required, township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today following the public meeting on the 3 proposed zoning bylaw amendment applications. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including from questions and comments submitted by members of the public and committee, will assist the township and applicant's team to determine next steps. Once the township is satisfied with the information provided by the applicants and their consultants, an additional public meeting may be scheduled or a report will return to this committee. The township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendments, for which this committee may recommend the bylaws to be considered by council or ask for additional information prior to council's consideration. If in the future, township council decides in favor of the applications by adopting recommendations from the committee, members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decisions may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meetings by YouTube, Zoom, or by telephone may email or call the township's planning department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision of the application. So our first public meeting will be for 64 Gray Street zoning bylaw amendment, and I'll call upon the applicant's agent, Josh Morgan from Morgan Planning and Development, to please present the information provided within item C 1.3.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of the application. Good morning, Mr. Morgan.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Okay, I'll get right into it. If I may have your permission to share my screen, Member Taylor, Chair
Yes,
Taylor. Thanks. Okay, so thanks for the introduction, Chair Taylor. As noted, the first application today, and I think I have the first 2 here today. So the first one today relates to 64 Gray Street. So I've highlighted the boundaries of the subject property on the cover page of the PowerPoint presentation. However, it's important to note that the zoning bylaw amendment before you today does not apply to the entirety of the property. Rather, it simply applies to a portion of the property, which I'll show on the next slide, that has been provisionally approved to be severed from the entire parcel that you see here. So again, the zoning amendment does not apply to the whole parcel. It just applies to the parcel that has been approved for a severance. And this next slide illustrates the parcel of land that the Committee of Adjustment has approved for a severance. And you'll see that the approved severance is severed lot is very similar in size to the adjacent lot fabric and the lot fabric across the street. So get into the purpose of the application now. So the purpose of this zoning bylaw amendment application is to rezone the severed parcel from the residential 1 zone to a site-specific residential 2 zone. And the primary purpose of this amendment is to allow the severed parcel to be developed with a semi-detached dwelling. Semi-detached dwellings are permitted uses within the R2 zone. And the only site-specific provision that is proposed to this amendment is to allow for a lot coverage of 40%. So just a description of the land, and I think members of council or committee are very familiar with the site. So the property is located on the north side of Gray Street. Of course, Gray Street is primarily a low-density residential or low-density street within a neighborhood that includes amenities such as churches, an elementary school, and daycare center. The property has, and I say the property, I mean the severed parcel, has 19.2 meters of frontage onto Gray Street and a total area of 878 square meters. And of course, the property is located within the village of Coldwater, which is a defined settlement area with access to full services. Oops. This is just an image of the severed parcel where that for sale sign is. So if you can see my cursor, it's kind of this area here. It doesn't go all the way back to the tree line, the severed parcel, but it goes back almost as far as the back side of the existing house. So this lawn area here is the area that's subject to the rezoning application where my clients wish to construct a semi-detached dwelling. So this is just a site plan that's been prepared to illustrate how the severed parcel would look once developed. So you'll see 2 semi-detached units with adequate parking for each one, including a garage. And as noted, this site plan has been designed to comply with all of the provisions of the R2 zone, with the exception of lot coverage. So we're seeking modest overage in lot coverage, and that's it. So onto the this is just the zone matrix, which shows all of the provisions of the R2 zone, lot area, lot frontage, lot coverage, etc., and how the site plan that I showed on the previous slide has been designed to comply with all but one of those provisions. So in terms of planning policy, the entirety of the property is designated settlement by the County of Simcoe's official plan. And of course, the county's official plan directs development and lot creation to fully service settlement areas such as the village of Coldwater. The entirety of the property is designated settlement living area by the township's official plan. And permitted uses within the settlement living area designation include single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, multiple dwellings, low-rise apartment buildings, and townhouse dwellings. So the township's direction provided through the official plan is to direct growth, of course, to settlement areas such as Coldwater. And then the provincial policy statement similarly directs growth to settlement areas, and in particular fully serviced settlement areas. And that same type of direction is provided in the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which requires municipalities to direct a significant percentage of their growth to these settlement areas. So based on that, it's my opinion that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to rezone from the R1 zone to a site-specific R2 zone, which would permit the construction of a semi-detached dwelling. I believe that it conforms with the direction provided by the county's official plan, the township's official plan, and the overarching provincial policy documents. And so that's it. I think I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Morgan. So I'll ask the township's planner, Emily Hale, if you have anything to further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members, and those joining us virtually. With your permission, I will share my screen.
Thank you.
So thank you to Josh for providing us with an overview of the application. I will try to summarize staff's comments relatively briefly, as the applicant's agent has covered majority of the details of the application and the general policy direction that has bearing on the application. I will just note that for those listening virtually this morning, that we have received written correspondence pertaining to the application that will be spoken to a bit later on during this public meeting. So as identified by Mr. Morgan, the subject lands are located within one of Severn's fully serviced settlement areas, being Coldwater. There is a general direction from the provincial level down to encourage growth and development within these areas, where we do have the infrastructure available to support such growth in a more condensed form, such as the semi-detached dwelling. It is intended that this be achieved through the optimization and efficient use of underutilized lands that are already designated for residential development. At this time, the application proposes 2 residential units in the form of a semi-detached dwelling. The proposed application appears to support a diversified housing stock within Coldwater, which would ideally meet the varying socioeconomic needs of current and potential future residents. This is a goal that is outlined within the township official plan. Given that the lands are located within a fully serviced settlement area and in such close adjacency to community services and the public school as outlined by Mr. Morgan, it does suggest that the property could be more efficiently utilized in this way to support the growing community. I think it's important to note that available lands within defined fully serviced settlement areas in the township and across the province are finite. There is a need to encourage diversified housing options where possible. Staff generally concur with Mr. Morgan and do not necessarily have any further comments to add at this time. However, staff are available to try and assist with any questions if needed. So thank you, Chair, for your time.
Okay, thank you, Emily. So now it's the public portion here now. Any persons present on Zoom or on the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Please unmute yourself when recognized and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. So if there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourself and now give your name and address for the minutes. So we'll wait a few seconds here, and then if who's going to schedule that? Are you, Emily, to see if anyone?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We only had one registered participant, Ms. Shirley Jennett. I'm not sure if she wants to speak as she has submitted written correspondence. However, Shirley, if you would like to unmute your mic, you're welcome to do so now.
I'm not sure. I think she's on there. If Shirley would like to speak, you're welcome to.
Yes, I do have several concerns about this. As you know, I'm on the neighboring property, and I recognize the need for housing, but it seems to me to be poor planning practice to change the zoning of one small lot to R2 in an established neighborhood of single-family dwellings to accommodate a proposed building to house multiple families. Are you able to hear me?
Yep, yeah, everything's good. Thank you.
Okay. It not only changes the aesthetics and tone of the whole area, it will create additional parking and traffic problems, and that's already a concern on Gray Street. That could mean a four-family residence, as I've been told that there's a possibility that there could be 4 families in this residence, with a possible 8 additional vehicles, not to mention visitor parking on a postage stamp size lot. If the whole area was zoned R2, then a multifamily build would blend in. But in my opinion, there should be some continuity in older neighborhoods to maintain a sense of balance and equilibrium. This is a village, and you don't expect to see huge buildings on small lots in residential areas, but controlled growth. Therefore, I do have concerns about the height of the proposed building and the incompatibility with surrounding neighborhoods. I don't think it's conducive to a neighborhood of well-kept single-family dwellings. And I'm concerned about the effect of additional traffic and congested parking.
That's okay, very good questions there. So I think staff and Mr. Morgan have written that down, and would either like to comment on Mrs. Jennett's questions and concerns?
If you can, Mr. Chair, just before you do that, Ms. Jennett, I need your address.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
My address is 56 Gray Street, Coldwater.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley. If Josh, if you'd like to comment on Mrs. Jennett's concerns there.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Good morning, Mrs. Jennett. Yeah, I mean, I understand your hesitancy. It's, you know, the comments that you've brought forward are not unusual. Like, we hear those sorts of comments all the time when we work on small and large intensification projects within within cities and towns. And I think, like, if I could maybe just make comment on a couple of specific things. So in terms of traffic, you noted a concern related to traffic and parking. So in terms of traffic, we did not commission a traffic impact study. It would be unusual, I would say, to prepare a traffic impact study for an intensification project of this size, simply because Gray Street most certainly is not at capacity, and I have a hard time believing that the creation of 2 new dwelling units on Gray Street will have a negative impact on the road fabric, Gray Street, or the surrounding lands. And I don't say that as a traffic engineer. I say that as a planner who reads a lot of traffic impact studies, and I just don't believe that the creation of this semi-detached dwelling will have a negative impact on the traffic in the area. In terms of height, the building will be designed to comply with the maximum height provisions of the zoning bylaw. So you're not going to see a building that is significantly out of step with the height of the houses in the area. And then your concern related to incompatibility, like, you know, that's a hard one for, it's kind of a hard one for someone like me to address, because we probably both have different views on what compatibility looks like. And, you know, one of the things that I think, well, one of the primary considerations here is just the fact that, you know, planners and municipal councils are being directed by the province to intensify in fully serviced cities and towns. Like, this is what we're being told to do. The municipality has an obligation, as directed by the province, to accommodate this exact sort of thing within serviced areas. So that's not to suggest that all developments within serviced areas should get the green light, but I view this as a fairly modest intensification project, quite honestly. You know, we're not coming forward with an apartment building on a tiny little lot in the middle of Gray Street. This is a semi-detached structure, which I think will fit well within the context of Gray Street. So I understand that that's probably not going to convince you, but that's kind of the nature of the job that we have here. So I hope that that's helped explain my opinion on the application. I'm happy to continue the dialogue if you wish. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your comments.
Emily, do you have any addition to that, or if you would like to go ahead, please do.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. I appreciate Shirley's time with us this morning and definitely acknowledge her comments and concerns. The only other comment that I would kind of add to provide some context for the application is that the adjacent properties of the residential 1 zone are also permitted to have a second unit. The difference is really the proportionality of the size of that unit. So on a single detached dwelling in the residential 1 zone can have an accessory apartment being a second unit that is smaller in scale to the principal unit. the difference with the residential 2 zone is that those 2 units can be the same size. So that's really what the main difference is between the residential 1 and residential 2 zone.
Okay, thank you. Allison, is there anyone else on the line there?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Emily, do you have anything further to summarize or do you have additional, you mentioned you have some correspondence that's been submitted on this application?
Yes, thank you, Chair Taylor. So I'll summarize the correspondence that we have received following the publishing of today's agenda. So written comments have been received from Cindy Cronin, a resident of Gray Street, Ms. Shirley Jennett, who did join us this morning, of 56 Gray Street, and Betty McArthur of 52 Gray Street. The correspondents all described some concern or opposition to the proposed rezoning, stating in their opinion, the proposed use would conflict with the single detached dwellings on adjacent lands. Concerns were raised for the potential design and facade of the building in contrast to the other homes, and matters relating to vehicular traffic along Gray Street and parking.
Okay, thank you. I'll give the public one more chance if they'd like to add anything else, and if not, I'll close the public portion off and open up to the committee. So any members of the committee who would like to speak to this? Member Cox. Yep.
There you go. Through the chair to Josh. I think the concern of the neighbors is if you look at your zone matrix, it says parking 2 per unit, and not your zone, but it's in the Appendix 1 part of the bylaw. It says semi-detached 2 per unit, but the parking spots are 6, and then underneath it says accessory apartment. So bottom line is, if you've only got parking for 4 vehicles and they rent those bottom units out, that's now 6 vehicles or maybe 8 vehicles. And where are they going to go? Because that street is congested. It has buses going up and down. And we already had issues this summer with parking on that street. So there's where a big concern for me is on that one. Because if we can plan for this, that should be planned for. And I get that some people take their basements and make them into accessory apartments, and jam cars on lawns and do things. But if we're going to plan for this, we should plan properly for it.
I'm happy to reply to that, and perhaps it would be helpful if I shared my screen and illustrated the site plan again. Okay. Can I do that?
Yeah. Like, I don't know, maybe I missed something, but I don't see 8 parking spots.
Right. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this site plan has been designed to accommodate, to accommodate the potential to have an accessory dwelling unit on each side of the semi-detached unit, just as Ms. Jennett had proposed. And this site plan has been designed to accommodate that. So if you were to consider this lot that we're talking about today, this new lot, the severed lot, if you were to consider a line going right down the middle, like a new lot line, basically. Each side of that would accommodate a minimum of 3 parking spaces without one getting in the way of the other. So if you could consider a parking spot in the garage, a parking spot immediately at the face of the garage, and then a parking spot on the sort of flare out of the driveway, each side of this could accommodate 3 parking spaces, which would more than accommodate what's being proposed today without having any need to park on the street. So I do think that we are planning for the future here.
Supplementary through the chair. But that doesn't say that the accessory apartment people have 2 vehicles. That only says they can only have 1.
Correct. And perhaps I could defer to planning staff and ask them what the zoning bylaw requires if there were to be an accessory apartment.
It says here that it's 1, on that page I have on page 11 of 18, it says parking, semi-detached 2 per unit, accessory 1 per unit. So can we put that in, that they can only rent to somebody who has 1 vehicle?
But I guess what I'm saying, Member Cox, is that this proposal or this site plan here actually achieves exactly what the zoning bylaw is directing. It would allow for one parking space in the garage, one parking space at the front of the garage. That would serve the semi-detached unit, and then a third parking space to the side on the flare out that could potentially serve an accessory unit. So,
but Josh, sorry. Yeah. What if somebody rents the accessory building and has two vehicles? Here's where I'm going.
Okay, I get where you're coming from, and I also understand the real sort of life nature of your question. And I suppose what I think when posed with a question like that would be, our first obligation is to meet the direction provided in the zoning bylaw, which we've done. And if one of these semi-detached includes a basement apartment at some point in time, then the building department would I think have to issue a building permit because we've met the zoning bylaw. And then it would be incumbent upon the person that was renting the unit out to make sure that there was enough parking for them, right? And if it was a family of four, which I can't imagine fitting in a basement apartment, who had two cars, then this wouldn't be the right unit for them.
Okay, but I'm just saying chances are that probably will happen if they do accessory, because most, even a couple usually have vehicles, especially if you live in Coldwater, because you've got to commute. But other than that, that's my one big concern. And my other concern is from the residents is the style of this home. I know what they're saying, and I'm not telling someone what the house has to look like, but it should fit in with the neighborhood. So it just looks like, I mean, there's a duplex down the street, an older duplex that's been there for, I don't know, 100 years. It's a brick building divided in two, and then a new duplex went right in beside it, which really doesn't fit, but I think it's nice. Some people don't, but that's what I'm trying to say. Is it going to, you know where I'm going?
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those things in the planning world that some official plans include very detailed like architectural design direction, and some don't. Severance does not have a very sort of comprehensive set of urban design policies. And so, I hear you. You know, is it a gap? I'm not sure. I do think that the new legislation that the province has brought to the legislature at Queen's Park actually might even make it more difficult for municipalities to direct urban design. So it's a tough one. It's a controversial consideration, right? Everybody has a different view of what a nice building looks like, you know, and mine will be different from yours, or maybe it'll be the same. I don't know, but you know.
I know. I just wanted to speak on their behalf and what their concerns were when they called me.
Yeah, understood.
But excuse me, through the chair, Emily, can you speak to that whole idea that if they do have an accessory apartment, then it becomes our problem because it's not written in the zoning that they have to have two spots?
Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Through the chair, so similar to what Mr. Morgan said, and perhaps Ms. Mandeville might want to add to my comments as well. If they were to, currently the zoning would only permit for the 2 units on that individual lot and wouldn't allow for any accessory apartments in the basement through zoning. Should the lot ever be further divided and the lots are now able to have 2 units on each side, it would require a building permit and evaluation through zoning and the building department to account for those types of parking considerations as with the zoning bylaw. That being said, it is a bit hard for us to plan for what ifs, and we do recognize the kind of concern for that. All we can do in implementing the zoning bylaw is making sure that the property and the proposal does comply with the current zone provisions. However, Ms. Mandeville might want to supplement my comments.
Yeah, well, I welcome her comments.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Just to add to what Emily was talking about, I just wanted to remind Council that we have expressed a goal of creating more affordable units. Typically, those affordable units don't necessarily accommodate 2 parking spots per unit. I'll remind Council of the recently approved apartment building that also requested a deficiency for parking. Being in Coldwater, having the county transit system run through Coldwater. Coldwater is a community that it is possible to go to the doctor, the bank, the grocery store, etc. without a car. Certainly, I know people who have lived in Coldwater for years without a car. So I think that we really need to keep that in mind. If there is a potential accessory apartment in here, they can accommodate the one required spot. And we really need to focus on the fact that we are trying to provide affordable housing. And these types of units, especially accessory apartments, are really the only thing the township's been able to do in order to try and reach that goal in the past. It is possible, or it may be possible, that in the future, should they have a severance and should they put in an accessory apartment, again, those are a series of ifs here, that more parking could potentially be accommodated. However, it's not a guarantee that even those plans will go forward. But certainly during building permit stage, we would look to ensure there is that one parking spot. And speaking from experience, if you rent or purchase a unit that has one parking spot, then you need to make alternate arrangements for that other vehicle. I think it's well known that you can't park on Gray Street and that that's an issue. So certainly that'll be up to a future tenant and the future owners of these homes to make sure they're renting and living accordingly.
Okay, I think we'll let Member Cox have a. You can go ahead and then Member McIntyre.
Supplemental. Yes, Katie, I understand that. I just was saying I was making sure that the residents could understand the whole principle of this. And when you look at it that way, there could eventually be 2 accessory apartments that someone in Coldwater who lives in a house all by themselves could sell their home and have a place to live and be able to stay in their community and not have to move away or keep looking after a big house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member McIntyre.
Well, thank you, Chair. Just a comment to, I suppose it'd be Katie. I agree with Mr. Morgan that the highest and best use for this is attached. However, are we in a place now where we, as the council, could put a restrictive covenant on it to have only one parking space in the event that they did a build out of another unit?
I'll let Ms. Manderville comment on that.
Thank you, Chair Taylor, through to Member McIntyre. It's really not, I don't think, something we could do. Again, it's going to be up to who rents it and who purchases this unit. I do want to just remind council, although we haven't reported on Bill 23, it does cap accessory apartment parking provisions at 1 per unit. So it's not like council could even say that you do need to. I mean, I suppose at this moment we might be able to say that, but if the legislation goes ahead, it won't be worth anything. Similarly to the architectural design comments, even imposing site plan control on something like this in the past, perhaps we would have had some control over the design aspect, and that's something also contemplated in Bill 23. So I don't think it's really something we can put on title here. I think it would have to just be up to the landlord and the tenant, certainly to enforce the parking restrictions on the property.
Supplemental. Just thank you, Katie. I wasn't sure we could do that or it's already in process. Mr. Morgan made it clear that that's the highest and best use for the property, and I have to agree with it based on places to grow and things, so on. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a question. When you're figuring out sewage allocation there, so this in reality was you would think it would be one house with X number of washrooms. So how close are we calculating that? Because I know our sewage is right at the maximum. I know we had committed for these inflow lots to be filled, but how close, like what was estimated for the number of washrooms for this lot versus in what it's going to be in reality? I'm just questioning how that would affect the capacity. I'm looking at Katie if she can answer that one.
Yeah, please save me, Katie. I don't know where your numbers are at for septic. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Taylor, for that question. I'm not sure if Derek Burke's on here and wants to weigh in. I know certainly in the past we've allocated some extra capacity for potential infilling. I see Derek is on here, so perhaps I'll just defer to Mr. Burke.
Through the chair, if I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, thanks. So yeah, the Severn's uncommitted capacity allocation policy does reserve contingent value in the system inherently for what we call infill development. So this is, doesn't require specifically a planning act approval. It's not a subdivision. It's not multi-unit story kind of, structure. So it does have, we reserve some capacity for these kinds of lower intensity infill development opportunities.
Okay, thank you. So we have there's a buffer there for that. Okay.
That's correct.
Is anyone else, Member Cox? You're on mute.
Through the chair, just one quick comment to the planners. I guess what I'm trying to get across to people is the Provincial Planning Act is changing very quickly. And our hands are tied when they tell us there's certain things they can do, because in the future, that that lot could have had up to 3 residential units on it. So I don't think people understand that we, as much as we may understand what they're thinking, we are tied to follow the rules. And that is the way it is in this day and age. And we are trying to find more housing. So I think we're probably better off having a duplex that's built properly than 3 residential units in the future if Bill 23 goes through, and we have no control over any of it. So I just wanted to make that more public so people understand.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vanderbilt.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Just to comment on Member Cox's comment there, I just want to clarify that this is a semi-detached, so they're attached at the side. A duplex is a horizontal situation. So this is a semi-detached, and as mentioned, there are other ones in Coldwater already. But regarding Bill 23 and the public perception, I think it is important for people to realize what is being contemplated here. The news did state that there would be 3 units, a maximum of 3 units on every property as of right. When you get into the meat of it, which we will be reporting back to council in December, it would appear that the 3 units will be for fully serviced areas, so those properties on water and sewer. So certainly Coldwater would be one of those areas that there would be no public input, there would be no public process. Someone as of right with a building permit could put 3 units on any property. That would include 1 unit within the main dwelling or the main building, and then 1 unit that is detached, such as a garden suite or a detached garage, a detached shed being converted. Some of the things I have seen is that it has to be an existing building, which is very confusing since, you could just build a garage and then convert it. However, there is some gray area still there, but it is important, I think, as Member Cox noted, to advise members of the public that the province is having these very hard directives and we have to follow their lead. We already as a township allow 2 units as of right on essentially every property with the exception of our unserviced shoreline area. So although this is coming in a different form, it's not unusual for what we already permit. Every other house basically on Gray Street could have a basement apartment, a purpose-built addition as an apartment, and then right now through the rezoning process could turn a detached garage or accessory building into a unit as well. So I mean, this is something that already occurs just in a different form on properties.
Thank you very much, Katie.
Okay, any other comments by the committee? So I think, do we have a draft motion?
We
Allison?
do. I'm just trying to get my video going here.
Okay.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, if you're ready for it.
Yep.
The motion reads that planning report number P22-038 dated November 9th, 2022, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z 22-10 for the subject property located at 64 Gray Street be received, and that a draft zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council for consideration at the next available meeting, subject to comments received prior to council's consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment, including additional submissions from the Planning and Development Committee, members of the public, circulated agencies, and township departments.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a mover for that, please? A move by Member Brennan, second by Member Stevens. All in favor? Great, that's carried. And I think we'll do the second public meeting and then we'll take a break after that meeting, if that's okay.
Perfect, thank you.
So we're going to change the page, and it's the next public meeting is for 1644 Anderson Line, and we have Mr. Morgan again. Welcome back.
Thank you, and I'm kind of fighting with the light in my office here. just coming at me. So if it starts blinding me, my apologies. Okay, so this application pertains to 1644 Anderson Line, and with your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. Okay, so this is covering slide of the PowerPoint here illustrates the location of the subject property, which is basically just south of the village of Coldwater. And just for context, I suppose similar to the last application, this zoning bylaw amendment application is a reaction to, or what we're doing in this case is actually seeking to achieve or address one of the conditions of a severance. So I'll just explain the severance really quickly here. So this property is owned by the family that owns Backwoods Maple Syrup. And really the reason why they've purchased the property is because they want to utilize the vast majority of the property that you see on your screen here to expand upon their maple syrup operation. And the severance, the purpose of the severance, which was approved a number of months ago by the Committee of Adjustment, was we called it a surplus farm dwelling severance, which sounds a bit odd because what you see on your screen doesn't really look like a farm, but maple syrup production is considered to be an agricultural operation by most in the planning world. So the severance that was achieved, the purpose of it was to sever off the existing driveway and house on the property from the balance of the woodland. And so the purpose of the applications before you today, or the application before you today, is to rezone the severed parcel, which is the parcel with the house on it, to a rural residential zone to reflect its historic use as having a residence on it. And then the second purpose of this application is to rezone the woodland to prohibit any future dwelling being built on it, and to therefore ensure that the woodlot is continued to be used for some form of forestry or agricultural use, in this case, a maple syrup production facility. So the mapping that I'll show you will bring that explanation to life. Okay, so the property is located on the west side of Anderson Line, south of the village of Coldwater. The area of the property is about 120 hectares or so, about 47 or 48 acres. Sorry, 48 hectares and approximately 118 acres. The lot area of the severed parcel is about 2 hectares, leaving an area for the retained agricultural lands of about 45 or 46 hectares. There's an active rail line which abuts the property to the west, and the property is largely occupied by woodlands. Just another picture of the property. So this image I think is most helpful. So as you'll see in the middle here, we've titled it severed parcel. So this is the parcel that has the house on it, which we're proposing to rezone from the rural zone to a rural residential zone. And then the balance of the lands, the retained lands, we're proposing to rezone from rural to a site-specific rural zone. And I'll explain to you what that means. So the severed parcel proposed to be rezoned from rural to a site-specific rural residential exception zone to recognize its existing rural residential use and to deem the existing accessory structures, which contain no habitable space, to comply with respect to size and height. And secondly, to rezone the retained parcel to a site-specific rural zone, as I noted, to prohibit any future residential development of the property. So the reason why the retained parcel has the site-specific provision to prohibit any future residential building is to avoid people, I suppose, submitting these surplus farm dwelling severances and then just building a new home on the retained parcel, which essentially would just result in creating new lots in agricultural areas, which you're not allowed to do. So when we create lots in this way, we must rezone the retained lands, which are to be used for a forestry or an agricultural use. We must rezone them to prohibit them from being used residentially, and that's what we're seeking to achieve here. So just on the policy side, the Township of Severn, of course, it's zoned rural, as I noted. It has an H14 zone on it, like a holding zone. That pertains to a nearby waste disposal facility, or perhaps it's a closed waste disposal facility. And so before anyone can build on this property, they need to have prepared what's called the D4 assessment, which is a study that analyzes whether the proximity of this waste disposal facility has any potential to impact the subject property. That D4 study has been completed by my clients, has been submitted to the municipality, and has been approved by the County of Simcoe, and I think the township planners are comfortable with it as well. So don't be concerned with the H14 there. That has already been essentially dealt with. The property is designated agricultural by the township of Severn. So I don't think I'll get into all the details of the township's agricultural policies, as most members of the committee are generally familiar with those policies, but big picture here, the township's official plan, being consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan and the county's official plan, requires that agricultural lands be used for agricultural purposes. And what we're seeking to do through this zoning bylaw amendment is to make sure that the retained parcel continues to be used for an agricultural type use, in this case, which is maple syrup production. So it's my view that the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone these lands is consistent with the direction provided by the township's official plan. This is just an image of the county's official plan, which designates the whole property as greenlands. Agricultural uses, which include maple syrup production, are permitted within the county's greenlands designation. We did consult quite extensively with the County of Simcoe before we submitted this application and the previous severance application, and they generally agreed, or they didn't generally agree, they agreed with us that using these lands for maple syrup was entirely appropriate given the policy context. So it's my opinion that the zoning amendment application agrees with or is directly in line with the policies of the County of Simcoe's official plan. And again, just big picture perspective here on the growth plan and the provincial policy statement. Both of those documents require municipalities and applicants to keep the agricultural lands used for agricultural purposes. And similarly, the PPS and the growth plan tell us that we need to protect woodlands. And this application will achieve both of those overarching goals. So I think I'll conclude my presentation with that. And if any members of council or members of the public have questions, I would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that. I'm going to ask if our township's planner, Brad Oster, has anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to committee. Thank you. So Mr. Morgan has provided a well-rounded summary of the purpose and effect of the application, so I won't repeat the matters that he's already discussed. I would just remind the committee that this is a requirement of the provisionally approved consent application to satisfy the conditions imposed by the committee to ensure that there would be no new residential lot created as a result of the consent application. As Mr. Morgan mentioned, the H14 holding symbol would continue to apply to the lands. And that's just so that so the applicant has done a D4 series study, which is a requirement of the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks due to the adjacent waste disposal site. The development, that study did conclude that the development being the construction of a replacement dwelling and a new agricultural building could proceed without impact to or from the adjacent waste disposal site. And the property owners have entered into a D4 development agreement with the County of Simcoe to ensure that the recommendations of that study are adhered to throughout development. But the H14 would continue to apply so that any development beyond what's already been considered by that agreement would be subject to assessment prior to any works beginning, but anything that's already in that agreement can proceed with the H14 still applied. Staff just also wish to clarify that this application does not seek to permit any sort of on-farm diversified uses or any uses which would invite the public to attend the site for tours, events, or other congregate functions. that participate in the agricultural use of the lands. As Mr. Morgan mentioned, the maple syrup operation is permitted as part of the farm use, which is allowed in the rural zone, and that use would be permitted to continue. But should the property owners wish to establish any sort of use on the lands that would invite members of the public in for tours or events, etc., then a subsequent zoning bylaw amendment and site plan agreement application would be required. So just in closing, this application is required as a condition of consent in order to conform to the applicable policies of the PPS, the growth plan, and the county and township's official plan by prohibiting any sort of residential use on those retained agricultural lands. It would also recognize the existing rural residential uses on the severed lands, as well as deeming those existing accessory buildings to comply with respect to their size and height, provided there's no habitable space within them. So subject to any comments during today's public meeting, staff are generally supportive of the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brad. So now I'll open it up to the public. Any persons present on Zoom or the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Please unmute yourself when recognized and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. So if there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourself now and give your name and address to the minutes. And I'll ask Allison if anyone is in line here.
None that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds here. Then I'll ask the township's planner, Brad Oser, to summarize any additional correspondence that has been submitted on this application and provide any further information. Brad?
Thank you, Chair. We did receive comments from the Fire and Emergency Services and Public Works Department, both stating that they had no objections to the application. Comments were also received from the County of Simcoe, indicating that they were supportive of this application.
Okay, thank you. So, Allison, no one else is in queue there to ask anything?
No, not that I can see.
Okay, in that case, I'll open up to the committee. If nobody, I'll let Member Cox and then I have a comment. Go ahead, Member Cox.
Yeah, through the chair. I think this is great. They're going to protect the forest. They're going to protect the whole thing, and yet there still can be a home on it. So I have no problem with this at all.
Thank you. My comment, I'm certainly all in favor of it. I know a little bit of maple syrup. We have it on the family farm. But my question is the H14 designation. So there may be an agricultural building or something built there in this agreement that it was either Brad mentioned it or Josh mentioned. I'm just curious. So the H14 is going to stay, but you can do some kind of a building or something in the meantime for the operation. If Mr. Morgan or Brad could speak to that.
Yeah, I can address that, and if Josh has anything further to add, by all means. So because of the H14 being applied to the property, the owners did need to have that D4 study completed. And then they subsequently entered into an agreement with the County of Simcoe, and that agreement included the construction of a replacement dwelling on the severed residential lands and the construction of an agricultural building on the agricultural lands as well. So because that development's already been included and considered in that D4 study, and then subsequently the D4 development agreement, construction and development of those buildings can occur with the H14 applied. Staff are just recommending that the H14 continue to be applied to the lands so that if in the future there's any development beyond what has already been considered as part of the D4 study and agreement, that development would be subject to assessment prior to any works beginning.
Okay, I think, thank you for the answer, and I'm certainly fully supportive, as is Member Cox, for this development. So, Allison, have you got a motion?
I do. Give me 1 second here. Okay, the motion reads that planning report number P22-037 dated November 9th, 2022, with respect to a zoning bylaw amendment application, file number Z22-09, for the subject lands located at 1644 Anderson Line be received, and further that a draft zoning bylaw amendment application be presented to council for consideration at the next available meeting, subject to comments received prior to council's consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment, including additional submissions from council, the planning and development committee, members of the public, circulated agencies, and township departments.
Thank you. Do we have a mover for that, please? Okay, moved by member Cox, second by member McIntyre. All in favor? It's carried. So that's the end of the public meeting. I think we're going to take a break, and we'll come back at 10 o'clock, if that's okay. And thank you, Mr. Morgan. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, it's hard now trying to explain to people that our hands are tied. This is what we can only do. And they have to know that. That's why I wanted them planners to say to people, this is it. Like, you know, you could have, and they could. They've already got that one across the street, and I didn't want to mention that.
Mm-hmm. Bobby, are you there? Bobby, are you there?
Are on the list.
Yeah, I see her on my screen here.
There she is.
Hey, how are you? I was talking to my son. How are you?
Good. Ron, any chance you could have a peek out and see if Mike is going to get back to his office there? Can you do that?
He must be going to the bathroom or something. I don't know.
I feel like he's talking to Jim, who's also missing.
Yes.
I'll have David pop over.
Okay, there's Jim number 5.
Where's Mayor number 1? Because there's Ward number 1 too. Mark number 1.
We'll tell you when he comes in.
He'll be right along.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just give a few more minutes for the mayor to get back to his office.
3.
We're going to do our third and final public meeting for the day is for 1882 Big Chief Road, looking for a zoning bylaw amendment application. I'll now call upon the applicant's agent, Bobby Lippington, from Designs by Bobby, to please present the information provided within item section C 3.3.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of this application. And good morning, Bobby.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Through you, I would like to share my screen and do a bit of a presentation.
Yes, please.
Share my screen, slideshow from beginning. Just bear with me. There we go. So thank you for having me today. The purpose of being here is to talk about 1882 Big Chief Road. The site characteristics are, it's a very large rural lot just located east of Highway 11, and there are a large lot. It's about 1.4 acres, and it slopes gently up with the house and the accessory building located far back on the property. Uses are very mixed and varied around this property, and they are agricultural and waterfront residential. There's also tourist commercial, as well as rural residential and agricultural lands surrounding this property. So very mixed use around it. This is a photo on the left showing the house way in the distance, and behind these trees is the accessory building, and that's the picture that I'm showing you on the right side, just giving you an idea of what we're looking at. So it's an existing accessory building, and we are proposing to convert the existing detached garage into a secondary dwelling for a family member, and there's no new buildings or additions proposed. As you can see from the site plan, we are a long driveway up to the accessory building where we proposed a new independent septic for the accessory building. Reason we decided to go with a separate septic is the existing dwelling, the septic is in good functioning condition, and we just chose to put in a separate septic for the accessory building. You can see that the lot is very well treed on the west side, right next to the accessory building, providing buffering there. We wish to rezone the property to permit an accessory apartment within a detached accessory building, and to permit an accessory building to be used for human habitation in the form of an accessory apartment. We do plan a brief renovation to this to create an open concept kitchen dining office with 2 bedrooms and a sitting area upstairs. Purpose of this application is for a family member, and the property has been recently purchased by my clients, and they wish to do this to have their family member close to them. So when we take a look at the planning framework, everything from the Planning Act through right to the Township of Southorn bylaw, and analyze it, we find that the Planning Act required municipalities to present up to 3 additional residential units on residential properties, where the use of 2 residential units in a detached house or semi-detached house, and the use of a residential unit in buildings or accessory structures to a detached house. That comes from the Planning Act, and it's noted that the township's official plan is in review and is changing to update to support these policies. From a provincial policy statement, we look at the provincial policy statement and the Greater Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And the provincial policy statement permits residential development that is locally appropriate for rural lands. It further goes on to state that the development is compatible with rural landscape and can be sustained by rural service levels should be promoted. Planning authorities shall provide for an appropriate range of mixed housing options and densities to meet the market base of affordable housing for current and future residents. The Greater Golden Horseshoe supports that as well, with a support of a range of mixed housing options, providing a diverse range of mixed housing options, including second units and affordable housing to accommodate people at all stages of life. And when we look at the Simcoe County official plan, local municipalities will provide an appropriate range of housing types and densities required to meet the current need of current and future residents. So when I took the time through the planning justification report to look at all of these overarching policies, everything that we have looked at can support the zoning amendment to permit the accessory building to be used for human habitation, as well as to permit a second dwelling on the property. We're consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan, and we conform to both the Simcoe County official plan and the Township of Severn's official plan as it's currently under review. And I am open for questions.
Okay, thank you. If you want to unshare your screen. And I'll ask now for staff, does the Township's planner, Emily Heel, have anything further to add to the materials and information presented by the applicant? Back to you, Emily.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a bit of an unstable internet connection, so I will just speak to it and not share my screen for this application. And thank you to Bobby for providing us with an overview of the application and the policy that do have bearing on the application. As Bobby has indicated, the applicants are seeking to rezone the subject property to allow for an accessory apartment in an existing detached accessory building. The rural zoning of the property does already allow for an accessory apartment within the principal dwelling. This rezoning would just seek to transfer those permissions to an existing detached structure. So as mentioned within the staff report and the planning justification report submitted with the application, there is that direction from the Planning Act to allow for these types of opportunities, including accessory apartments within detached ancillary structures. The township does have some flexibility on rural properties to ensure the situation would appropriately lend itself to such proposal. But given the large size of the property, it is anticipated that the property would be able to appropriately accommodate the rural servicing and parking. And as noted, the applicants do propose to install a private on-site septic system to service the proposed apartment. Additionally, the structure is already existing, so there is an opportunity to make use of this space without causing disturbance in other areas of the property, which would maintain as much vegetation as possible, continuing that buffering from neighboring land uses. The size of the apartment that is proposed would still be limited to those provisions of the zoning bylaw, maintaining that secondary status. And the total number of units to this application would still only be 2, similar to what is already permitted on the lands, just in a different form. Overall, staff generally concur with the planning justification report that was provided with the application. However, I am available to try and answer any questions if needed. And thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, Emily. So I'll open it up to the public now. Any persons present on Zoom or on the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Please unmute yourself when recognized and turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed on the Township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourself now and give your full name and address for the minutes. And I'll ask either Emily or Allison if there's anyone in queue that wish to speak.
Mr. Chair, not that I can see, and there wasn't before we had our technology issue either. So,
okay. At that case, I'm going to ask Emily to please summarize any additional correspondence that's been submitted on this application and provide any information, any further information if you feel so.
Thank you, Chair. We received comments from the Public Works Department and the Fire Department, both indicating no objections to the proposal, just stating that the accessory apartment should still be accessed using the existing driveway, and that is the case for this application. Additionally, following the publishing of the agenda, written comments were received from neighboring landowners, Michael and Janina Gaiorki, of 1879 Big Chief Road, in support of the applications and indicate that they don't have any objections to the proposed rezoning. But that's all the additional correspondence we've received.
Okay, thank you, Emily. I'll ask the applicant agent, Bobby, if you wish to provide any further information on this application.
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask the committee if anyone on the committee has any comments on this application. I don't see any. In that case, Allison, have you got a motion for us?
I do, Mr. Chair. The motion reads that planning report number P22-039 dated November 9th, 2022, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application file number Z22-11, for the subject property located at 1882 Big Chief Road be received, and that a draft zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council for consideration at the next available meeting, subject to comments received prior to council's consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment, including additional submissions from the Planning and Development Committee, members of the public, circulated agencies, and township departments.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a mover for that? Would you like to speak, Member Brennan, or are you going to move it? Yeah, you're on mute, sorry.
No, I just want to say that I move that motion.
Okay, thank you. So moved by Member Brennan, second by Member Cox. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Have a great day there, Bobby. Okay, and I'm not going to take any more breaks. We're going to keep going here because the last one was a long one there. So no delegations. The consent agenda. Does anyone wish to pull anything from the consent agenda? Member Cox.
Through the chair, I'd like to pull E 2.1, please.
Okay, anyone else like something pulled? Okay, in that case, a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Certainly. So the motion reads that the agenda be adopted, including consent items with the exception of item E 2.1.
Have a mover for that. Moved by Member McIntyre, second by Member Stevens. All in favor? And that's carried. Section G, planning report, revised official plan. And I think we've got Member Burkett would like to speak, and then we have Mr. Crown and Andrea as well there. So go ahead, Member Burkett. You're on mute.
Get off. Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair. I forgot. I looked at the consent agenda, but correspondence. I want to speak to 2.5, the official plan review comments. Or is this or maybe I need clarity. Is this an opportunity for council to speak about the official plan and if they want to pull something?
I think if you want to comment on 2.5, we should pull it out for new business.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to pull 2.5. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Just by way of comment, so Mayor Burkett, would you like to pull one particular item or just in general make comment on the draft official plan? Because if it's just in general on the draft official plan, that would be under G.1. But if you want to pull one particular comment that's listed there, then that would be pulled under consent.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
So to Madam Clerk, I'll speak to it at G1. Sorry. I'll speak to it at G1.
Okay. Thank you. So then we're fine, Chair Taylor.
Oh, so the motion's been passed. So we'll take it off. I think we'll welcome Wes Crown if you'd like to start discussion on that. I'm sorry, Andrea would like to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. If I may, please, I'll just kick it off. Although Mr. Crown and I will both be providing a few introductory remarks, we'll then turn it over to the committee, which is, most important here for your questions and your comments. So the new official plan project has come a long way since February 2021 when it was first kicked off. A year and 9 months of information gathering and significant community consultation that certainly exceeded the minimum requirements of the Planning Act. We now have a draft document that takes into account what we've heard to date, and it has been produced on time per the approved work plan schedule put forward by MHBC. So I'm pleased to report that as well. Since the open house and the public meeting held at the end of September, staff and MHBC have met with the Council of the Chippewas of Rama First Nation as part of our duty to consult. And we've reviewed the multiple submissions we received by the October 5th cutoff date. Each of the submissions has been recorded in the comment matrix, which is included in attachment 2 to the planning report before you on the agenda. And there is a response provided for each comment. Some of the comments have resulted in changes reflected in the current draft, which is on the agenda today. This draft made in Severn official plan would not have been possible without the significant time dedicated and the input received from members of this committee. residents and landowners in our community, including with the, in some cases, the assistance of their planning consultants, external partners and agencies, staff from both the township and the county. And of course, I'd like to make a special mention to our consultants, Mr. Wes Crown and Mr. Jamie Robinson from MHBC and their team, who led us through the process with all of their expertise and pulled it all together for us in the end. So I just wanted to conclude my remarks, Mr. Chair, by thanking everyone involved to this point. I'll now turn it over to Mr. Crown.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, for that summary and comments. And I will now officially hand it off to Wes Crown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of committee. It's good to be in front of you today at the end of this at this stage of this process. And principally, I'm here to answer any questions that the committee has. Andrea, I think in her presentation and in her report have outlined the significant process that we've undertaken over the past 18 months or so, and the significant consultation that has occurred during the preparation of the new official plan that's before you today. Throughout that process, throughout the full OP process at all and each of its stages, we actively engaged and consulted with the members of the community of the Township of Severn. We reflected what they had said by way of the vision and goal for the type of community that they wanted to build and to be reflected in the new official plan. And that plan that's before you today has significantly benefited from the input that we received throughout the process. And I think, as Andrea had said, since the release of the draft document in September of this year, we've reviewed and responded to each of the comments that have been submitted to the municipality and made numerous changes to the plan as a result of the comments that have been submitted. Mr. Chair, I think there's two elephants in the room, if you will, as it relates to this new official plan. The first is the comments that have been received from the County of Simcoe, and in particular their encouragement and recommendation that the municipality not adopt the new official plan and await a date which has not yet been determined when we would get detailed comments from the county on the new official plan. And the other, I think, the other elephant in the room, which you've heard a little bit about this morning from both consultants making presentations and from your staff, which is Bill 23. And what I would suggest to you are some potentially major changes to the planning system in the province of Ontario. In both cases, my recommendation is consistent with your staff's, which is that you, the municipality, your community has made a major investment in this process. And our recommendation is that you should proceed to adopt this official plan, or sorry, I guess you should proceed to recommend to council the adoption of this official plan to complete that process. I've been involved in land use planning for almost 40 years. I have been the manager, if you will, of planning programs in 3 municipalities. And I've learned a lesson, which is that if you wait for the province to stop changing the planning system or the county to catch up to your processes, you'll be waiting for a long time. We don't know what Bill 23, what version of Bill 23 will get passed and approved by the legislature. We don't know what changes to the Planning Act will be included. But if you continue to wait for the changes in the planning system to be completed, you may not be in a position where a new official plan would be ready for adoption by council. My most recent experience with this was in the town of Midland. We started an OP update process in 2008. The province released a vision statement for the county of Simcoe in 2009. We put our OP process on hold. Once that process was completed, we started back up again. And in 2010, the province released the proposed growth plan amendment number 1 to the growth plan dealing with Simcoe County. And again, we put our official plan process on hold. Mr. Chairman, 11 years later, the municipality decided that we couldn't wait for the province to stop doing its changes to the planning system, and the municipality adopted a new official plan. And in hindsight, I supported the deferrals of the approval of the OP based on the efforts of the province. But I would recommend today that that was probably not the right decision. We should have continued to complete the work that our community was invested in and had participated in to get that new official plan before the approval authority for approval. And I think that's the recommendation that we've made today. That's the recommendation that Ms. Woodrow and her staff have made in the staff report. And we think that that's the right decision to make at this point. We think that if you delay further, it will impact the eventual and when you will get a new official plan for the Township of Severn. So, Mr. Chairman, that's sort of brief comments. Mr. Robinson sends his regrets. He's not able to attend today, but certainly myself and staff are willing to answer any questions with respect to the document that's before you, and to discuss the larger OP process.
Thank you, Wes. We'll open up to the committee, and Member Burkett has his sign up, and then followed by Member Brennan and followed by Member Cox.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and to you, Wes, and to Jamie. Thank you very much for this past year and a half. I know it has been challenging and a lot of work on your part, but more so, I want to thank Ms. Woodrow and your staff. And I'm not sure how you've done it based on what I saw, and I hope other members of council looked at the building reports for the last 2 years and the amount of growth that's happened in our township. I don't know where you found the time in between all those building applications to do what you've done and arrive at where we're at today. I know in my 12 years, we haven't seen a new OP, and I can't agree with Mr. Crown more so that this needs to be approved at this term of council. So thank you, Andrea, to you and all your staff, and thank you, Wes and Jamie, for all your hard work. Having said that, there is one thing that I would like to speak to. So there were, in the document, there were 4 connections that, and I'll outline them, that I hope other members of council will support me on having them removed. And I think, Andrea, you may have some wording, or Wes, you may have some wording to replace what I'm looking at having removed. So one of them was the haul route on South Sparrow Lake Road from the Seiler Quarry. It should read that it heads west and then south on Cambrian to Nichols Line, rather than up South Sparrow Lake Road right to highway number 11. That's the first one. The second one is the connection and the opening of the road between Cox and Hawkins Drive. The third one is opening the connection at Thompson and Minoki Beach. And the fourth one is Amigo and Bayou Road. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Can you comment on that, Andrea or Wes?
Again, Mr. Chairman, very briefly, the changes to the Schedule E can be made before the documents put in front of council for consideration and adoption. The 4 road connections, if you will, we can address both within the existing policy framework in the official plan, and I appreciate the mayor's heads up on these issues. And I haven't pulled it up, the exact wording, but what we would propose to do is to add additional wording to the official plan that makes it clear that any proposed road connections, whether it's these 4 or others, would have to be preceded by a separate public consultation process with the immediately affected neighborhood prior to a decision of council to complete the road along either those unopened road allowances or the creation of a new road allowance for that road where needed. So what we're proposing to do is add a policy that says none of these connections can happen unless there's a separate and independent consultation process with the neighborhood first, and that the policies in the new official plan would make it clear that it's not council's intention to extend or connect these roads without going through that process first. And I think this is reflective of, in particular, not so much the comments that we've received through the new OP process, but the comments and the input that the municipality received through the transportation master plan. And what we're trying to do is to line up those 2 processes to make sure that the council has the appropriate policy framework to guide those decisions down the road, and to make sure that the people that are most directly impacted by it will be directly consulted before a decision is made. So, Your Worship, I'm hoping that will address, and with committee's agreement, we will make those changes to the plan in the version that will go to council next week.
Thank you, Wes. Member Burkett has a follow-up.
Supplementary through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Wes, for that. But can we take the wording of the connecting roads right out of the OP? And just to your point, if in the future we have any desire to connect any roads that may be connected in the future, it would go to public consultation rather than have any of them in it today as part of the OP. I'd rather not have, because what happens is if someone's reading it and a resident may think that it may or may not happen, but if we just take the wording right out, like we don't name any of the roads and we just have a generic, if in the future there may be an opportunity to join some roads and we don't name the roads, I think I would feel more comfortable. And so would the residents, knowing that it's not in there.
If I may, Mr. Chair, through to His Worship, the answer is yes.
Thank
you. The intent would be that there would be no specific connections that would be named, and the policy would be general in nature that would apply in all circumstances across the municipality. I will note that the many of the schedules for at least 3 of the 4 noted, it's an unopened road allowance. So there is a road allowance in those circumstances, which the municipality owns. The roads and the classification of the roads don't show in that section that's currently unopened, but the road allowance remains on the schedules, showing that there is no road there. So I don't think we need to remove the the road allowance component. I think with the other changes that we would propose to make to the new OP that will address the mayor's concerns.
Thank you.
Are you okay with that, Member Burkett?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Wes. Member Brennan. And you're on mute there, Phil.
Yeah, I want to echo the mayor's comments to thank staff and the consultants for the hard work they've done. I particularly want to thank them for meeting with me since the last meeting. That was much appreciated. And I want to say that the suggestion that we move ahead is bang on the money. I'm so glad that you guys have recommended that. I think A, it reflects everything that Wes Crown said. B, it sends a message that that wrecking ball called Bill 23 needs to be seriously pulled off the map. So I'm all for it. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Member Brennan. And Member Cox, you had your sign up.
Yeah, through the chair. Wes, are the road allowances shown on other maps and schedules? Or are we just showing them on that Schedule E one?
If I may, Mr. Chair, through to Member Cox, the approach that we took with the mapping is that in many of the schedules we show the full property fabric, and so that would include the road allowances. And I just can't do it off the top of my head without actually going to check each and every
one. No,
one
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't just showing road allowances in that Schedule E that had the connected. No. Is that Schedule E going to be removed?
It will be updated.
The mapping? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. The other one is the severance sublots or the building on lots that do not have water and sewer in settlement areas. They are under the, I think Andrea told me, for the residents who are affected, they're underneath the water and sewer parts of the OP.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So did we have any, I'm just trying to get an email up here. So do we have any way of making sure that the residents, there's one in Washago I know of, and then there's also one on Leisure Court, that these residents understand that they probably, I'm sure they will be able to start to follow through to have their lots ability to build on them or to sever a lot?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could just very briefly, I understand what Member Cox's comments relate to, and we've created a policy framework in the official plan that says that within settlement areas, and particularly within fully serviced settlement areas, the first priority for new development is for it to connect to that to those municipal services. However, the policy does provide, where justification is submitted to the municipality, that development on private services within those settlement areas is permitted. And I think that's consistent with the PPS and the growth plan. And it allows the municipality, either through council or through committee, to assess whether or not the development on private services would have a negative impact on the provision of full municipal services within those areas. And so that policy framework is there and it would be permitted.
Yeah.
So what will happen after council adopts the official plan is that a notice of adoption will be sent out to the community through the regular notification process. And so residents will be aware that the new official plan has been adopted and submitted to the county of Simcoe for approval. And the residents will need to contact the county to follow along with the approval process as required. The new official plan does not come into effect currently in the pre-Bill 23 planning system in the province of Ontario. The new official plan will not come into full force and effect and be able to assist people who want to submit applications until it's approved by the county of Simcoe. And there'll be another notice, and there will be potentially appeal periods that are allowed where someone is not happy with the final decision on the new OP. I'm hesitant to continue to say things like, this is pre-Bill 23 system in the province of Ontario. But the reality is it is the pre-Bill 23 system in Ontario. We don't know what the eventual Bill 23 system in Ontario will look like. Whether the county will have a planning function, whether the county will be involved in the review and approval of the new official plan, and whether third-party appeals, for example, will be permitted on planning decisions in the province of Ontario. Those are things that Bill 23 will answer once the legislature deals with it after it's gone through its full legislative process. So, hopefully, people that are hoping to rely on the new official plan will be following along and will see the notices, contact the county, make sure that they get notice of the county's decision, and they can also reach out to the planning staff and just say, what's going on? Where are we with the approval of the new official plan, and when can I submit my application to the municipality?
Thank you, Wes.
Follow up.
Member Cox, follow up? No.
Yep, through the chair to Wes. So Wes, I don't see that Bill 23 is going to affect these two. If anything, it'll probably open it up. But it's the county that's going to affect, and it's going to affect how long this is going to take for us. I just feel that these people have been sitting waiting for so long, and they just are asking, is it feasible now to start to look at a planning consultant? Or because it sounds to me like it was all obviously there if it was suitable in most cases.
Again, my suggestion is have those residents reach out to planning staff to start the process. People said, I've been doing this for 40 years, and people always ask me when's the best time to submit my planning applications, and I always say 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago. They should begin that process.
And just further to that, through the chair to Andrea. Andrea, is this when you send out notices, you send out notices to all the people who have put in questions, so they will get this notice that says this is what's going on pertaining to their concern, or is it just the overall where we're at?
If I may, through you, Chair Taylor, to Member Cox's question, certainly given the magnitude of this project, we will be providing notice to anyone who has provided any comments in the past, just as a matter of good practice. It would exceed the Planning Act requirements, but we would like to do that given it affects the whole community.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one more comment, is that I'm very happy that we're not putting those connecting roads in, and we're just going to have a good policy that for the future gives our residents a chance to speak up and have a say in what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member McIntyre.
Thank you. Through the chair, I also would like to comment that I think that the work by the staff and by Mr. Crown has been beyond our expectations, and I'd like to thank them for it. And secondly, I have a question for Mr. Crown. It took so many years for Midland to step up and finally approve their OP. Was there any kind of a pushback or any kind of fallout from the province when they took charge of that and went forward, or has it just been kind of quiet about that since they did it?
If I can, Chair Taylor, respond to Member McIntyre's question. By the time Midland got around to finalizing their OP, the process was open for that. So there really wasn't any pushback, if you will, principally from the county of Simcoe. The problem was that there were people who were obligated to go through application processes, amendments to official plan and amendments to zoning bylaw, that wouldn't have had to do that and be involved in the lengthy and costly process if the new official plan had been in place sooner rather than later. So the implications of delay push people to having to submit applications that maybe once the new official plan was in place, they wouldn't have had to do. So there was no pushback from the province or the county, but it was a good thing for the community because it updated the planning rules and the planning processes in that municipality.
Member McIntyre.
Thanks, Wes. And just, if I heard you correctly when you started your initial comments, you commented that there was two elephants in the room, the first being Simcoe County. And what kind of objections do they have with this OP that you're putting forward? Have they indicated anything to you, or they've just said flat out that they're not happy with it?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, I don't think the counties said that they're unhappy with the new official plan. I think what they've said is that they just haven't had sufficient time to complete their review and submit detailed comments to the township. They have been involved throughout the entire process. Each notice, each report, including the vision document, including the recommendations reports, all of that material has been circulated to the county throughout the process. What hasn't happened is that they haven't had the opportunity yet to complete their review. I think our position is that we've given them the amount of time that's required under the Act. Many agencies have submitted comments, and we're happy to continue to work with the county after adoption on the review and potential modifications to the plan where it's needed to ensure that it's consistent with the PPS, in conformity with the growth plan and in conformity with the county official plan. We're of the opinion that the document that's before you today, with the changes noted in the track changes version, is consistent with the PPS and is in conformity with the growth plan in the County of Simcoe official plan.
Supplemental through the chair to Mr. Crown. Do you have, from your experience, do you have any kind of a timeline that the county might take to do this? Could it be a year? Could it be longer? Before they step up and approve your work and our official plan?
So if I could, Mr. Chairman, very briefly, there are timeframes in the Planning Act by which and when the county needs to make a decision on the new official plan. And if they don't, the local municipality has the right and an appeal ability to appeal that non-decision to the OLT, the Ontario Lands Tribunal. My experience is that the county nor the township wants that to happen, and my experience is that we will work with the county to review the plan, to identify any modifications that are required, and bring that through to council within the sort of next 6 months up to a year. They've been really good lately. The county has been on creating a fairly efficient review and approval process, and we don't expect that to change. Just to confirm, that process, by which I mean the county's review and approval of the new official plan, will include modifications. I've never seen a new official plan in my 40 years that the approval authority didn't ask or request modifications. But the process would include your staff bringing those proposed modifications back to council for review and consideration before a final position of the municipality on those modifications are taken. So even though you're adopting a plan and there will be modifications, council will be directly involved in the process of reviewing any future modifications to the plan before those are made by the County of Simcoe.
Thanks, Wes.
Thank you, Member Cox.
Through the chair to Wes. Wes, I want to go back to the road connections, if you don't mind. I'm sure there's residents listening. So can we make this clear? Like, I know sometimes we get caught up in and nobody else is catching it. We're making it clear that the road connections that are in there now, the names will be gone. Yes?
Correct.
And that there'll be no roads named at all for the future in this, because it's just a policy statement that says sometime in the future, 50 years from now or whatever, there could be a connecting road in Coldwater that needed to be done. And if there is one, that all the residents on those two roads need to be contacted before anything is ever put in any official plan or anything is done with it, or master transportation plan. Am I clear on that?
Correct. So I know there are experts on the EA, the municipal class EA process at the municipality, but when you're extending a new road, there are criteria that would say that that work is already approved under the Environmental Assessment Act process, as long as you don't need to acquire additional land, you're staying within the existing road allowance, and there's a cost limit maximum for which that connection can cost when you don't need to go through a higher order EA process. What the policy in the new official plan would say, regardless of all those things, before a decision is made to connect those, you will need to consult with the immediately impacted neighborhood before a decision by council is made. So even where the EA may permit you to do it, your new official plan will set a framework that will require you to undertake that consultation before those connections are made.
Okay, so clearly stated that this is for the total township. We're not talking about any connecting roads that we talked about before. They're gone. This is just a policy statement for the whole township of Severn. If a connecting road may go through in 50 years from now, there'll be nothing in this plan that says any names or names anything. It will be that something has happened to make it dictate that it should be looked at.
So
you're not going to yes or no me, are you?
Well, Mr. Chair, I always with a complex policy document, there are always caveats. So, for example, in the South Division Road Secondary Plan, there are proposed road connections that are shown in that document and have been shown since the secondary plan was originally approved. So, those are contained within the document. And those won't be removed as a result of this process because they're contained within the approved secondary plan. If there's a development application that's submitted to the municipality for a new residential subdivision, and it includes future roads that would connect to existing roads, that planning process would require the consultation with the neighborhood before those roads are constructed. I think very specifically what we're talking about is existing unopened road allowances that are identified in the official plan. Those roads cannot be connected until the municipality undertakes and consults with the neighborhood before that decision is made.
Okay, I'm going to let our CAO speak, and then Member Cox can come back.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something Member Cox said in her first submission. So as I understand it, we are making the policies more generic in the official plan, and that's not the planning language, I know, but that's what I understood. But Member Cox, you mentioned the connections wouldn't be in either the official plan or the transportation master plan. The transportation master plan is not on the table today, and council has not made those decisions.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify for anyone listening that, guaranteed that it's out in the transportation master plan, because you have not had that discussion yet.
No.
So just to clarify, we're talking about the official plan and only the official plan.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Yes, that's what I mean. The official plan.
Okay. Anything else, Member Cox?
I don't think so. Okay. I'm not going to get a yes or no answer.
Okay, anyone else from the committee who'd like to comment?
Oh, I just have.
Yeah, you're allowed one more.
Okay, thanks. Through the chair to Wes or Andrew, are there any other things that were changed that you think are pertinent that we should know? Like I went through it, but I just wondered if there was a big change to anything else that you felt that somebody had mentioned and it was something we might need to pick out.
I'll pass it over to Andrea or Wes.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, through to Member Cox, a lot of refinements to the new official plan, as you can see from the track changes, to clean it up, improve the formatting, to ensure that we eliminate the use of acronyms, for example, and use full terms throughout the OP. A lot of improvements that we've made. So the municipality received detailed and thoughtful comments from the school board, from agents for Hydro One, MTO, etc. And we've made a number of changes to what I would call refine and clarify the intent and purpose of the official plan. But nothing, in my opinion, that fundamentally changes the overall basis or structure of the official plan or the policy framework that was included in the original draft. I think in all cases, the comments from residents, agencies, ministries, staff have improved the overall clarity and function of the new official plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'll let Andrea speak and then Mayor Burkett.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Through you, just to build upon what Mr. Crown is saying, I just would like to reiterate the attachment to the report, the detailed comment response matrix. If there are members of the community that may not have had a chance to look at the report yet, but have made submissions on the draft official plan, they can sign their comment in that matrix as well as a detailed response, and can always follow up with the planning department if they have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair to, I guess, Andrea. So committee approves it the way it is today. This then will go to council on Monday for final approval. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Is that how it would work? So just so that we're clear, I couldn't find Schedule E in today's document. So will we be able to see Schedule E on Monday or whenever the agenda is posted, Madam Clerk?
The full draft bylaw will be included in the agenda when it goes out.
Okay.
So, and that should be sometime tomorrow.
All right. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Member Stevens. You're on mute there, Ron.
Just have to hold the space bar down, Councillor Stevens.
Okay, very well. Yes, my
Hit the space bar on.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, I would like to have a comment that was made by the mayor earlier, identifying 4 areas that he had concern with, and I'd just like them to be repeated again so the rest of us can pick up on exactly where they are. It's in the area we're talking about, but it's more defined. Thank you.
If Wes could comment on that, I think you had, well, what's going to be taken out according to what Mayor Burkett had requested.
It was the mayor.
Yeah.
If I may, Mr. Chair, and I'm absolutely certain His Worship will make sure I get the list correct. South Sparrow Lake Road, Cox and Hawkins, Thompson and Minoki, and I'm having a hard time reading my last of that list.
Migo
Road, yes.
Migo and Bayou.
And Bayou, correct.
And I'm going to ask again, you have all of those down and listed?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so just in wrapping up, I too would like to echo members' comments. A lot of hard work by staff and MHBC, and we should proceed along as we planned, and hopefully we'll get through this. So if I could have a motion from the clerk.
Certainly. So the motion reads that planning report number P22-040 dated November 9th, 2022, with respect to a revised draft new official plan for the Township of Severn be received, and further that based on the comments received to date, MHBC and planning staff be directed to incorporate the proposed changes outlined in the revised draft new official plan included as attachment 1 to planning report P22-040 together with additional changes requested by the Planning and Development Committee, including the requested changes to Schedule E together with a new transportation policy to address community connectivity, and present a new final official plan for consideration of adoption by council on November 14th. And further, that the 2-year moratorium as per section 22(2.1) of the Planning Act be waived on all applications for amendments to the Township of Severn new official plan as permitted under section 22.2.2 of the Act, in order to allow for applications for amendments to the official plan to be considered by council through the full public planning review and approval processes.
Okay, we have a mover for that, please. Moved by member Cox, seconded by member Stevens. All in favor? And that is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Hope you have a great day, and we might see you on Monday, maybe, eh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think it'll be Mr. Robinson on Monday.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Sure. I know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wes.
Have a great day. And I'm going to go to new business, which is E2.1. If member Cox would like to, I think you brought this forward.
Yes, I did. I think this report or this letter that Jody Lloyd has sent to the Honorable Stephen, I never say his name right, Lecce, is excellent. And I think it clarifies many blocks that are there that aren't our fault and things that need to be looked at. So I just would like us to support this letter and to keep it close by us, because you never know when you're going to need it.
How would you, our CAO has a comment.
Thank you. I might ask Andrea to weigh in, but Councillor Cox, I actually read it the opposite. I read it that they were a bit throwing the municipality under the bus, in that we are part of the holdup and they would like us not to be. And the one that caught my attention was we asked for extra parking and transportation plans. Well, as we know, that's the most important thing for us, because that's where we have the most trouble. So I wasn't as enamored of the letter as you are, but maybe I read it differently than you did.
Well, I guess I was looking at the positive fact that somebody actually stepped up and said something, and probably all the transportation and the parking comes from the province. So it's the province's issues that they pass down to us. But that was just my read on it. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll let if Andrea could weigh in on her comments and what the CEO said.
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Through you, I certainly echo the comments that Ms. Kennard had as well. That was my impression similarly. Thank you.
So what do we do now? We don't support it?
Do we take it for
We
information?
can just, we can just receive it for information if that's how you'd like to proceed.
Are you okay with that, Member Cox? I'll let
Sure.
you. Okay.
But I don't think we're ever going to get a chance to, never mind.
Okay, so the motion then reads that the correspondence from the Simcoe County District School Board regarding barriers contributing to delay of approved capital projects be received for information.
We have a mover for that. Moved by member Briquette, second by member McIntyre. All in favor? And that is carried. We have no closed session. Motion to adjourn.
Just motion that this meeting being is hereby now adjourned at 11:21 a.m.
We have a mover for that. Moved by member Brennan, second by member Cox. All in favor? And we'll see everyone at 1 o'clock.
Hey, thank you.